The story begins with Yuan, our protagonist, excitedly preparing for a trip. He arrives at the airport in high spirits, already imagining how he will enjoy his vacation just like everyone else. But when he enters the boarding area, something unexpected happens. Without realizing it, Yuan passes through a portal and ends up in another world, a magical place filled with fantastic creatures. When he realizes what just happened, he is radiant. After all, being summoned to a parallel world seemed like the perfect dream, a chance to live like the protagonists of the isekais he used to read about in mangas and light novels. Soon after, a mysterious man invites him to participate in an exam to measure his magical potential. Full of confidence, he accepts right away. He even imagines himself breaking the magic stone from how powerful he is, just like the heroes in the stories. But reality throws a bucket of cold water on him. When he touches the stone, it glows with a white light. And unlike what he thought, this means he has no magical affinity at all. Everyone bursts into laughter. With the help of a magical microscope, the examiners notice a very faint green glow, an almost invisible trace of nature magic connected to the wood element. They told him to come back when his magic was strong enough to be seen with the naked eye. Feeling useless, Yuan is approached by an old man who offers him a job as a gardener since he has a tiny affinity with nature. And so, with zero glory and lots of humility, he begins a life surrounded by watering cans, little flowers, and moist soil. His magic is only good for making some small flowers sprout here and there. One day, while working near the forest, he heard some strange noises and went to take a look. He found a group of young people flirting, romance in the air, but they see him spying and don't like it one bit. Using magic, they quickly catch up to him and humiliate him. Later that night, he complains to the old man who hired him, and the old man drops a revelation. The only way to truly gain power would be to find a fairy. He even tries to cheer Yuan up, telling him that in the past he obtained a fairy seed, but was never able to make it bloom. He gives the seed to the boy and suggests he try his luck. Yuan examines the object and notices a seal with a Chinese symbol. Curiously, he is the only one there who can understand what is written. He spends days trying several methods to make the seed grow. Nothing works, until he has a crazy idea: use his own blood. He returns to the forest. There he meets the same group from before again, but this time, the girl in the group bites one of the boys and reveals her true identity, a vampire. The others try to fight her, but she counterattacks and captures another one. Yuan, desperate, tries to run away but fails. She catches up to him and stabs him in the chest. But instead of dying, something extraordinary happens. Flowers begin to grow from the wound. They open, revealing in the center a woman, a serene and powerful-looking fairy. She approaches with the intention of taking his life, but it's too late. Yuan is already dead. The vampire appears ready to claim her victory, but the fairy has other plans. She unleashes a special attack that exchanges her vitality for Yuan's. Miraculously, he wakes up alive and with the fairy finally awakened, but the reception is far from warm. She makes it clear that she only saved him so she could kill him personally. She begins to attack him, but everything she does ends up backfiring on herself. Before things get worse, a mysterious woman appears, introducing herself as the headmistress of Shoyu Academy. She gives Yuan a magic book called the Fairy Guide, which he uses to temporarily seal the fairy. Later, the headmistress explains that the fairies suddenly disappeared from that continent, and this book is the only remaining relic about them. Yuan wants to keep the guide, but she proposes a deal. He must enroll in the academy as her student and help her find a vampire infiltrated in the school. That night, a voice begins to come from the book. It's a fairy named Is. She begins explaining the origin of the fairies and details about their abilities. She also reveals a harsh truth. Yuan is too weak to summon any fairy, so she transfers herself to his smartphone to make communication easier. When he arrives at the academy, Yuan doesn't get the warmest welcome. The students try to humiliate him again, giving him a test crystal, but this time the crystal shines brightly, revealing 2 magical attributes. Without wasting time, he tries to impress a girl and invites her out, but she gets scared and runs away all red. Confused, he looks for answers with Yezi, who explains that besides the affinity with nature, Yuan now also carries the power of the vampire and the fairy. This includes a rare ability, the power to naturally charm people. During training, Yuan can't keep up with his classmates' pace. A jealous student challenges him to a duel. He refuses, but the teacher insists. When they are about to begin, Princess Ankai shows up to watch. The fight starts with the opponent casting a wind spell, but Yuan is protected by a barrier. His fairy Fei Mo asks him to release her and let her kill the opponent, but Yuan refuses. Instead, he uses his wood magic to win and ends up fainting right after. When he wakes up, he finds himself in another world. There he meets a wounded girl, almost lifeless, and tries to help her. but soon men appear saying they intend to sell her as a slave. Yuan tries to run away with her, but is brutally beaten. Even so, he protects the girl until the end. Later, he discovers that she is a human from the fairy kingdom. He wakes up back in the real world. Yezi explains that he ended up entering the fairy world and that Fei Mo won't attack him anymore. He tries to contact the fairy, but she still has that same cruel attitude as always. Later, while in the infirmary, Yuan hears voices and hides. He discovers there are vampires among the students, sucking the energy of another patient. Fei Mo appears through the cell phone and says that he can regain his strength if he feeds on vampires. At night, while preparing instant noodles, he feels someone approaching. Thinking it's the vampire, he hides and arms himself, attacking the person with all he's got, only to discover it was Princess Ankai, who was sleepwalking. She wasn't being followed, so he lays her on the bed and ends up falling asleep as well. She wakes up the next morning, nestled against Yuan, and completely loses her temper, calling him a pervert, shameless. He tries to apologize and offers her the noodles as compensation, which calms her down since she loves them, but soon they have to hide again. There are intruders nearby. Vampires invade the room, search everything, but don't find them. When things calm down, Yuan uses his wood vines to tie up the enemies and escapes with the princess. He tells her to run in one direction while he lures the vampires the other way. Yuan awakens Fei Mo, who immediately goes into action, attacking the vampires on his behalf. She dominates the enemies with absurd strength, making it clear she's not playing around. But before she can land the finishing blow, the master of the vampires appears in the blink of an eye. He eliminates the subordinates as if they were nothing. And this warns Yuan. That man is a level 8 knight, an opponent that Fei Mo in her current state would have no chance of defeating. The fight leans in favor of the knight, and Yuan, not knowing what to do, asks Iz for help. She says there are two options. He can increase Fei Mo's power by creating a bond with her, or he can rebuild the fairy world. The problem? He doesn't have enough magical energy to enter that world. The princess, who was watching everything, intervenes and reveals that she can transfer part of her spiritual energy to him. But Yuan, shameless as ever, negotiates. He will only accept if she promises a whole year of instant noodles. She agrees. While she transfers her energy, the knight attacks, but Fei Mo throws herself in front to protect him, taking the blow instead. Yuan is taken directly into the fairy world, accompanied by Yezi. There they find Fei Mo, but not as he expected. She is working as a hired assassin. The strange thing is that she cannot see or sense them. Yuan begins to follow her discreetly and discovers that she is talking to a man identical to him. This man's name is Z. He plays an instrument on the streets, enchanting children with his music. However, he is attacked by thugs for trying to protect the little ones. Fei Mo, seeing the scene, remembers when she was saved by him in the past. With her heart touched, she joins the fight and helps him. As thanks, Z gives her his sword, and Fei Mo promises that she will be by his side whenever he needs her. Yuan, watching all this, cannot hide his discomfort. He knows that Z is too cunning and suspects that all of this was planned to win Fei Mo over, like in the games he himself used to develop before being transported to this world. Back to reality, Yuan is still unconscious, and Fei Mo continues fighting the knights. Already exhausted, she uses her last resort, trapping the knight using her own blood. At this moment, Z reveals that he can see Yuan and asks what he intends to do with Fei Mo, the heroine of the game, but Yuan answers without hesitation. He doesn't see her as a character, she is real to him. Z then visits Fei Mo's house, but when he arrives, he is greeted with suspicion and violence. She attacks him. Fei Mo says that no one has ever visited her before, and that scares her. Z, however, insists, giving her gifts and trying to get closer. Yuan can only watch all this from afar, frustrated and powerless. The next day, the two go out together on a sort of date. Z introduces himself as an explorer and talks about the various places he has known, especially one surrounded by flowers, which he says is his favorite place. The next day, after Fei Mo kills a man on a mission, she finds Z waiting for her. Afraid of being judged, she hides the sword. Z prepares dinner and treats her with affection. Yuan watches everything, surprised to realize that the events are unfolding exactly like in the game he was creating before everything happened. Fei Mo then accepts a new assassination mission. She wants to save money to run away with Z. Her boss warns her that the boy may be dangerous, but she ignores it. She buys the tickets and gives them to Z, who promises to meet her in 3 days near the lighthouse. Time passes. 3 days later, Fei Mo packs her things and leaves. On the way, she finds the same delinquents from before, but surprisingly, she spares them. Arriving at the lighthouse, she waits and waits and waits. 3 days and 3 nights go by and Z does not show up. Yuan watches everything from afar with a lump in his throat. Then, at dawn on the 4th day, Fei Mo's boss appears and tells the cruel truth. It was a trap. The place is bombed. Even wounded, Fei Mo fights against all the enemies. When they try to force her to surrender using a little girl as a hostage, she defeats them all by herself and saves the girl, but in the process ends up being stabbed. At that moment, Z reveals himself as the true mastermind of the entire ambush. Fei Mo, in tears, recalls her moments at his side. The gang leader wants to kill her right away, but Z doesn't allow it. He fights against his own companions, using fairies under his command. Even gravely wounded, Fei Mo stands up and tries to take Z with her to death, but he is protected by his fairies. She attacks until her swords break and her body can't take it anymore. But instead of letting her die, Z offers her a contract. If she accepts, she will become an extremely powerful fairy. With no options, she accepts and transforms. Overcome by rage, Yuan attacks Z for having manipulated Fei Mo that way, but Z explains that it was all part of a game, an experiment to evolve the characters. He reveals that he and Yuan are actually the same person in different versions. His goal is to conquer this world. Before disappearing, Z leaves Yuan with the final choice. Yuan then decides to free Fei Mo from all of that, even if it costs him his life. He ignores Yezi's warnings and climbs up to where she is. He gives her a farewell kiss and throws himself onto the magic sword. His blood blossoms. Fei Mo awakens and, in that moment, understands. Yuan and Z are not the same person. Yuan was real. She cries for his death. But surprisingly, Yuan is still alive. She demands explanations and he reveals the whole truth about what happened in the real world. Together, they open a portal and return to the present. There, they discover that the princess spent all her spiritual energy. Now Yuan and Fei Mo finally manage to unite, literally awakening her fairy form. With this new power, they face the night as equals. The battle is intense, and Yuan even seems to be enjoying his newfound strength, but Yezi calls him to reason. It is time to end this. The two fighters unleash their final attacks and Yuan comes out victorious. After the battle, the headmistress gives him 2 fairy seeds as a reward, but asks him to keep everything that happened a secret. The next day, exhausted from the battle, Yuan can barely stay awake in class. And then the teacher introduces 2 new transfer students, none other than Fei Mo and Princess Ankai. The two choose to sit right next to Yuan, which makes all the boys in the class stare, of course, dying of envy. Suddenly, he becomes the target of a small male revolt. The guys start chasing him through the school corridors, accusing him of stealing all the pretty girls. Trying to escape, Yuan hides in the library. There he asks the librarian for some magic that could help him cultivate magic seeds. She gives him 2 scrolls, saying that's the best he can get at his current level. At night, Yuan tries to use the scrolls, but Yezi quickly interrupts him, saying they won't work. She reassures him, explaining that she ate a botanical encyclopedia and now understands everything about plants. With her help, they discover the correct way to make the seeds grow. Excited by the discovery, Yuan simply throws the seeds into the lake and waits, and waits, and waits. Days go by and nothing happens. Meanwhile, the fugitive knight from before gives a report to his master. The boss is furious that he didn't fulfill the plan, but calms down upon discovering that there are fairies involved. He orders the knight to capture the fairy, even if he has to kill her master. Back at the lake, one of the seeds finally reacts. A white-haired fairy appears, magical and beautiful. Fei Mo, seeing how she awakened, feels disturbed. The new fairy gains consciousness immediately and already goes after Yuan, calling him an imposter. But before the attack continues, another seed begins to bloom. With the arrival of this second fairy, the first one retreats. Both accept Yuan as their master. He decides to name them. The white-haired one is called Lotus Frost, and the other, Oxian. The two are sealed inside the fairy guide. The next day, the headmistress appears with bad news. The renegade knight is leading soldiers from the Orf Empire to attack the princess and capture Yuan's fairies. She orders him to flee the academy, taking the princess with him. During the journey, they notice that Oxian and Lotus went ahead to a lake. Yuan and Ankai run excitedly to join the fairies, but end up facing a dragon. The beast tries to capture the little fairies for finding them too cute. Then, it goes after Yuan. The dragon introduces itself as Dioros, and Yuan, instead of running, challenges it to a duel. He uses his magic vines to bind the creature and forces the dragon to surrender. As compensation, Yuan asks for some money. Dioros doesn't argue, just flies away, leaving behind a magic whistle. Later, Yuan books a room at a lakeside resort to rest with his companions, but Lotus remains cold and distant with him. She reveals that, since she woke up, she feels an inexplicable hatred for Yuan. He realizes that she has amnesia and advises her to relax in the lake. However, the situation gets out of control. Lotus collapses emotionally and tries to attack him, but since the bond between them is active, she ends up suffering the damage herself. Out of nowhere, the knights appear wanting to steal the fairies. Yuan uses the whistle to call Dioros, but instead of helping him, the dragon joins the knights, hoping to get a fairy for himself. The battle becomes chaos. The two fairies face the knights in a 3-on-3 fight while Yuan is chased by Dioros. His vines don't work against the dragon this time. Dioros throws him into the lake, where he ends up managing to trap him with a new spell. At that moment, Yuan notices a magic seal at the bottom of the lake that reacts to his presence. Fei Mo senses the danger and runs to help him, leaving the fairies alone and vulnerable. Meanwhile, the knights take advantage to ambush Ankai, who was asleep, and wake her up. And there is Z again. He warns that a new game has begun. Beside him is Lotus Frost, still in human form. She offers to take care of Yuan's wounds, but overdoes it. She introduces herself as Lion, and explains that Yuan entered the fairy world inside her memories, and that to get out, he needs to follow her and help her recover her memories. Z, in turn, finds a baby dragon and orders it to spy on Lion. The little one comes back saying that she picks flowers to survive and is trying to find a cure for her sick sister. Z repeats the same trick he used with Fei Mo, trying to get closer to Lion, offering help to find medicinal herbs. They go together into a cave but are attacked by a giant tiger. Even so, Lion does not hesitate and moves forward to pick the necessary herb. The cave begins to collapse and Yuan tries to save her, only to be left behind when Z suddenly appears and teleports her to a safe place. Lion guides Z out of the cave, but the tiger begins to chase them. They reach a cliff with nowhere to run, and Lion puts herself in front of Z and the baby dragon, wielding only a branch as an improvised weapon. When the monster tries to trample her, she is saved in time. Z returns to the fight and defeats the beast easily. He discovers that the one who woke the beast was the baby dragon itself. Aware of its mistake, the little one begs for forgiveness. Z even forgives it, but throws it down the cliff as punishment, ordering it to go look for more herbs. Later, Lion breaks down in tears. The herbs she picked were not able to cure her sister. Z then reveals that he knows a cure, something called the purity of the 3 incarnations. The next day, Z kneels and proposes marriage. Lion, without saying a word, simply leaves. She didn't respond because deep down, all she wanted was to take care of her sister. Her heart was tied to this purpose. At home, she takes care of her sister, Lotus Frost, who is getting weaker and weaker. Lion says that Z revealed a possible recipe for the cure, but it is still incomplete. The next morning, Lion goes out in search of more ingredients. Near the lake, she finds Z sleeping while waiting for her. He invites her for a boat ride. Yuan, invisible, follows everything. During the ride, Lion shares a painful memory. It was at that same lake that her sister saved her from drowning, and since then, she developed the illness. The next day, Z says he got the complete recipe, but the final ingredient is cruel. The blood of relatives in large quantity, something extremely dangerous. In the real world, the knight still cannot attack the princess because of a protective spell cast by Yuan. When she wakes up, she runs and hugs him, unaware that he had been manipulated. Meanwhile, Fei Mo keeps fighting against the other knights, but she is exhausted and cannot protect the other fairies. The princess arrives at the battlefield, accompanied by a knight who quickly reveals his true intentions. He attacks the fairies and announces that the other knights are on his side. Back in the fairy world, Lion keeps walking with Z, but Lotus watches them from afar, heartbroken. Lion had said she was going out to look for herbs, but in reality, she was with Z. During the conversation, Lion vents. She is tired of living only to take care of her sister. She blames herself for everything that happened at the lake, but also admits that she has already accepted that Lotus's illness has no cure. Lotus, listening secretly, bursts into tears. That night, Lion gives her a medicine mixed with poison. Lotus realizes it, but even so, she takes it. Later, when Lion is preparing the meal, Lotus grabs a knife and goes to her but hesitates. Lion, who already knew, says, "Go ahead," and forces her sister's hands. Lion then asks to be taken to the lake so that her blood can be used in the cure. There, Z reveals to Lotus that Lion did all that on purpose. She made her hate her so that she would accept the sacrifice. But Lotus refuses. She carries her sister's body to the center of the lake and prays. She asks God that they may be born as sisters again in another life. In exchange, she offers her own life. Z then offers to turn them both into fairies. Seeing all that, Yuan explodes. He accuses his evil self of playing with people's lives. He attacks him, but Z counterattacks and defeats him easily. Still lying on the ground, Yuan remembers that Fei Mo is fighting for him in the real world, while he remains trapped there. And then he sees himself reliving everything again from the beginning, but now Lion can see him. He lives through all the events from zero until reaching the point where she cries because of her sister's illness. This time, he tells her about the purity of the 3 incarnations, but he also talks to Lotus, revealing that the final ingredient is lion's blood. After hearing everything, Lotus promises she will not let Lion sacrifice herself. Later, Yuan is invited to a dinner with the 2 sisters. During the meal, he and Lion suddenly faint. When Yuan wakes up, the room is empty. He runs to the lake and there they are, about to repeat the sacrifice. Frustrated, Yuan realizes that everything he tried to do changed nothing. He begs for one more chance. Z allows it. And then Yuan wakes up once again, reliving everything from the start. This time, at the crucial moment, he prevents the sisters from hurting themselves. Before anything can happen, he explains that they don't need to sacrifice themselves to be happy. The 2 hug, the reconciliation happens. Yuan then walks away and leaves. Outside, Z waits for him. He congratulates Yuan for succeeding. He says that maybe nothing he did will affect the real world. But at that moment, the fairy Lotus appears to say that this is not true. Together, they open a portal back to reality, also taking the baby dragon with them. The dragon comes out of the lake carrying Yuan on its back. He quickly rescues the princess and puts her in safety. Now, Yuan faces the knights and the leader of the group. When the fight begins, Lotus merges with Yuan, awakening a new fairy form. With this power, he goes after the knight and realizes that he can now control water. He freezes the enemy in place and then saves Oxian from another enemy by using ice again. Famo also receives help. Yuan drowns the second knight with a jet of water. Meanwhile, the last knight tries to capture the dragon. Yuan runs to protect him and lands a punch so strong that the man spits blood. He doesn't stop, chaining blow after blow until knocking the enemy into the lake. The leader of the knights breaks free and releases a terrifying aura. He prepares to use his ultimate attack. Yuan calls Famo to merge with him as well. Yuan's new form is so majestic and powerful that the leader trembles in fear, but even so he attacks. Yuan has fun, testing several powers, watching the knight sweat to try to keep up. In the end, the knight falls. Yuan prepares for the final blow, but the princess stops him. Instead of attacking, he casts the spell to the sky and breaks the fusion with his fairies. The battle comes to an end. The princess declares the end of the fight, and the knight withdraws. The lake begins to bloom. Lotus reveals that she will merge with the lake to pay for past mistakes. Oxian returns to the fairy guide and Famo does the same. Shortly after, Yuan and the princess depart together, riding on the dragon.